My folks came down and rented it for a while, and so I was now living on the East Bayfront. They had a pier in front of the house. And
you're how old at this time?
This will be about 1935 or 36. At the front of the house, there was a fishing boat, and there was a fisherman named Peterson that lived at 227 East Bayfront. And he was a great husky Swedish fisherman, and he fished for barracuda and albacore, which were the fish some white sea bass. And then we were next door to a family who lived in a house that was the Day family. And the Day's daughter, Anita, married Charlie Chaplin. And so Charlie Chaplin and I got divorced, but Charlie Chaplin's sons, Sidney and Charlie, lived next door. And they were kind of pals. They were a couple of years older than I, but I tagged around a little. But it was an important part of growing up was on the little island, and with the Sidney and Charlie Chaplin, and Pete Peterson was very friendly and very helpful and very popular. He was just recognized actually because he had gone barefoot all his life. His feet were calloused and he could strike a match to light his pipe on his bare foot. And there was Sidney and Charlie and I and all of us were going around the island scuffing our feet, hoping to get a callus to be able to strike a match on our bare foot. But all we had was a lot of broken stick matches left around. And Pete Peterson didn't have any crew available any longer. So I got to be a commercial fisherman when I was 10 years old, or 11 years old. It was the first year I went. And I learned to run the boat. And the more interesting thing is we just sort of went out in the ocean and found our way around. You didn't you didn't have much to do with the compass. There was another fisherman that had a Monterey fishing boat that he'd often tie to the end of the pier in front of the house. And I can't remember his name, but he was an Italian table grape vineyard owner. And he hired me to pump out the boat, paid me with platters of table grapes. I loved mechanical things, and took the outboard motor up to a place called Carver Craft in Costa Mesa. And they looked at the job I'd done fixing it, and they were kind of impressed and gave me a job.
The bills, was it that kind of thing, or you like being a lawyer?
Well, I didn't dislike being a lawyer, but it didn't have any love on my part. I loved it when I was a mechanic at Carver Craft, and I loved it when I was on the fishing boat. It had real emotion, but reading law books wasn't quite as thrilling for me. One trip I'm down in Tahiti, I just meet Kelly, and he picks me up at the airport, or he meets me at the airport, and we were standing there, and a group of people from New York come over, and they explain that we're photographers and editors from this magazine, what's the great Sports Illustrated. And we'd like to hire you guys to show us around. We'd like to meet the 10 most beautiful girls in Tahiti and go to the 10 most beautiful places. Can you help? Kelly says, sure. So we make some deal, a couple bucks a day, and we set out to gather up the 10 prettiest girls we'd ever seen and help get their pictures taken and got all that. And then we got a boat for them and took them to all the 10 prettiest bays and coves and spent almost 10 days showing these people around. And I made a couple $100, which was big money for that. I went down and we got a hot air balloon license, and they got the same treatment I had on my other license, and they just gave it to me because they didn't have anybody to test or anybody that knew about it.
But it's illegal.
But the license is legal, but California didn't permit balloons. So McGrath's assistant, the dean of men, was from Tijuana, and he got the Secretary of Mexico to approve the flight of the balloon down in Tijuana. So that first balloon flight we made was in Tijuana, and we went a few miles, and McGrath was at the helm, and he crashed and nearly burned down the farm. And then, so I became my job to sort of learn how to fly the balloon and teach everybody. And so the balloon burned up, and then we got a new balloon to go with the old.
It burned up, but I'm going to assume you weren't in it.
No.
So of all the things you've done, a lot of which seem dangerous and even a little crazy, in the air, blimps, balloons, sailing, Tahiti, wherever, is there one that stands out?
Yeah, well, my good friend George Brower got to be one of my very first clients, and he got the first regulators from the surplus from the war and brought them down to his store that he had on Paramount. And then we started teaching people how to go do scuba diving. And we chartered a boat, and every weekend we'd take people out scuba diving over in Catalina. I got the first regulator in California to use, and taught a whole bunch of people about taking them to all the caves. The whole LA Harbor jetty was full of abalone. And
you still do any of these things? You still go underwater? You still go up in the air? You still go on sail?
In a couple months I'll be 89. And not having to do those things seems
prudent?
Well, not so much prudent, but less friction, less anxiety, less stress. Well, I consider myself an expert in doing what happens to you. I had none of this. Nothing I did was something I planned in advance. It's something somebody invited me to go along on. From the beginning in the sailboats, I would walk down by the yacht club when I was on the little island, on the Balboa yacht club was on the island, and get invited to go sail on a snowbird in the snowbird race. And then I got invited to go in a little bigger boat, and then pretty soon I was invited on the 10 meters, and then I got invited on the Honolulu race. Everything was just a function of something somebody invited me to do, and I just stood around and let it happen. But I didn't create any of it.